Evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're just waiting on one more school board member to come, so just a few more minutes. Thank you for your patience.
order. 6 p.m., April 25th, 2022. Can I get a roll call?
Yes. Mr. Sterling?
I am here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Rogan?
Here.
Mrs. Venieri?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Meeks here.
Joe Rogan is absent for the record. Chris Ardrino, recording secretary.
Terrell Yarbrough, superintendent.
Shelley Wagner, Human Resources.
Michelle, Curriculum and Instruction.
Josh Ryan, Business and Operations.
All right. Can I have the pledge of allegiance? So,
Yep.
Jason.
Evening.
Oh, good evening.
This evening I have 5 bowlers from McChesney. I'll introduce them and let you know their grade. Serena is our only 5th grader. Here tonight we have Sarah, Natalie, Ben, and Aiden, and they are our state bowlers, or bowlers that made it to state. We had 5 of them from McChesney make it. So, yes. McChesney proud, so if everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
We're not doing that.
Oh, never mind. Never mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You wanna see them?
All right. I need to, you're gonna have, no student travel, 11A1, and consent item 12A. I need a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
And Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogan?
Aye.
Mrs. Venieri?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye. All right. Dr. Yarbrough.
All right, how we usually start off with our mission statement, which is behind me as well. The mission of the Harlem Consolidated School District as a vital part of the community is to help diverse learners realize their unlimited potential by providing an educational program dedicated to academic excellence and the development of strong character in a safe and respectful learning environment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to number 6, approval of board meeting minutes, regular and closed minutes of April 11th, 2022. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Mrs. Rogan?
Aye.
Mrs. Venieri?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Turn it back over to Mr. Bloom. Awards and recognitions.
Well, good evening, everyone. Gotta give us, we're gonna have to maximize our space here, so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Keep coming, all right.
So it is it's my pleasure tonight to introduce some amazing student athletes, a couple of teams that have been very, very successful this year, but also to make a statement that I can almost guarantee now for the next 8 years, we're gonna be recognizing bowlers at Harlem board meetings. Our program, like if you wanna look up the definition of feeder program, you got it right here. So this is an exciting evening because I get to introduce our middle school bowling teams and one of our elementary school bowling teams and an individual. We've got a whole bunch of accomplishments. You can see here, we got Kelly Nimps, who heads up the program. She's got, like, her speech is about that many pages, so she's got a lot of recognizing to do. We got some awesome things to celebrate this evening. So I'm gonna turn it over to her, let her talk about all these accomplishments, and let you introduce, or let you hear from all of our student athletes tonight. So way over yonder, we've got Kelly Nips.
I'm gonna squeeze on in here. I thank you so much. Thank you for having us tonight, and before I go any further, I'd like to thank our coaches besides myself, that are here. Ken Roberts, stand up please. Since his daughter Allison was in 5th grade, and I've been very indebted to Ken, very much so. And Jim Bryan Jr. is not here. Not here, but his wife is here. And I have Jim with me next year because we have Miss Addison with us next year. And Ben Dolly. Scott Dolly, sorry. And Nick Papini Sr. is not here. He will be with us again next year. So I've had 4 gentlemen, usually I have some women involved too, but yeah, I'm totally indebted to them. Could not do this by myself, taking 4 teams to the state tournament, 1 person, no way, no how can do that. And they had to jump through hoops in order to get qualified, in order to be in the pit with these kids. So if I could just give them a little bit of a round of applause, I would really I'd also like to thank the Harlem Athletic Director, Rebecca Hoffman, for all of her support. She's been phenomenal this entire season, and could not have done it without her as well. Let's start with Mr. Aiden Higginbottom. Aiden, he is in 6th grade at McChesney. He qualified as an individual for state. He missed the cut only by 32 pins to get to day number 2. He did very, very well. He is currently in 14th place in the top 16 with a 143 average. Mr. Benjamin Dolly, he was all sectional, 2nd place, all state, 9th place, averaging 185. He goes to McChesney, as I said, in 6th grade, currently averaging 200 and is in 2nd place in the top 16. 3 weeks ago, he bowled a perfect 300 game during a match. Bowler in the state of Illinois to do that.
Wow.
Our McChesney Olson Park girls, yes, we co-opt, lucky enough to be able to do that, and there's a lot of hoops you gotta jump through in order to co-opt. McChesney Park, we've got little Natalie, little Sarah, little Serene, and from Olson Park, we got little Haley. That's a little. All right, they were the youngest team to go to state. They had 3 6th graders, 1 5th grader. They finished 4th at sectionals, which put them at state. They finished 5th in the state of Illinois amongst the 24 girls teams that were there. Serene, a 5th grader, finished 68th individually. She bowled her highest game ever, 149. Annie Abruzzo, a 6th grader, finished 55th individually. She bowled her high game of a 158, and she's currently in 4th place in the JV division of the top 16 with a 121 average. Sarah Wilson was all sectional individually. She finished 17th individually at state with a 158 average, missing all state by 24 pins as a 6th grader. Her high game was a 213. She's currently in the JV division over at Don Carter Lane. She has the highest average of all the boys and all the girls over there. So she's currently number 1 for top 16 with a 149 average. Haley Semenchuk, our Olson Park girl, she was all sectional also. She finished 16th in the state of Illinois, missing all state by 3 pins. Which I want to say, we had another young gal a couple years ago, miss state, all state by 3 pins, and she's an individual champion right now. Okay, she had an average of 160, her high game was 206, and currently she's averaging 177 and is in 6th place in the top 16. Our Harlem boys, competitively speaking, they were the youngest team at state. They finished 6th at sectionals, finished 7th at state. We've got Braden Atkins, 7th grader, finished 63rd with a 1287, which is a 126 average, 128 average, excuse me. 153 was his high game. Currently, he's averaging 126 for the middle school league. Grade A. Mr. Dick Bikini Jr., 7th grader, finished 64th with a 1263, had a high game of a 158. He's averaging 130 in the middle school league. He's very, very close to the top 16, right here. Mr. Steven Sisler, 8th grader, finished 30th at state with a 161 average. 1661 was his total. High game of a 207. He is currently in 6th place in the top 16 with a 170 average. Mr. Mason Evans, he is in 8th grade. He was all sectional individually, all state 3rd place with a 197 average, had a high game of a 266 game, and he is currently in 3rd place in the top 16 with a 181 average. Now we got the girls. All right, we have a roster of 6 girls. The reason why we did a roster of 6 girls for these girls was there's so much going on with COVID, somebody getting hurt. So these 2 young ladies came aboard the middle school program, and I'm looking at them. I see one's gonna be an eighth grader, gonna be in 9th grade. I see one that's a 7th grader that's gonna be in 8th grade next year. And I'm thinking, I cannot send those 4 girls to state without some backup. So, Kaylee Martins currently averages 125. She started the season 91 for an average. And she's currently averaging 125 in the middle school league. She's knocking on that door of top 16. We got one more match tomorrow, okay? And then we've got Riley Fish, who's currently in 11th place in the top 16 with a 153 average. And I wanna say these 2 girls epitomize what a team player is, because without them being there for those 4 girls, I don't think they could have done it. It was a team of 6 the entire time. And so I applaud you 2 girls. Alexis Bourne, all sectional, all state 9th place with a 170 average, had a high game at state of 194, and she is currently in 7th place with a 171 average. Addison Bryan, who is a 7th grader, so we got her back next year. All sectional, all state 6th place with a 180 average, high game of a 224, top 16 right now, she's in 4th place with a 183 average. Allison Roberts, all sectional, all state 2nd place with a 201 average. She is leading the top 16 right now with a 227 average, and that's a record. With 1 match to go, 227 average. Ashlyn Tevez, also all sectional, all state, with Harlem's first ever individual champion. And she did that with a 21-26, average 212, high game of a 255. She also has the IESA state record for 4-game series of a 920. That's in the record books. She's currently in 2nd place in the top 16 with a 205 average. Those 4 girls, because of score-wise, that team broke the sectional record, which was actually set by our own 2019 Harlem boys with a 2205. They bowled a 2228. And they broke some more records. At the state tournament, they won, they beat the state record by 401 pins.
Wow.
And they also won the tournament by 511 pins. And they beat the IESA boys champions for this year, Mendota Holy Cross, by 1,001 pins. We got 4 girls moving on on to high school bowling. Allison, Ashlyn, and Alexis and Riley are moving on to high school bowling. We got 2 boys, Mason and Caden, moving on to high school bowling. I feel really good about their future. Y'all better be watching because there's gonna be a whole lot more hardware coming. And I'm super excited about the future for the Harlem girls team and the Harlem boys team because who we have left, they've got the makings of champions themselves. So I would love to give everybody a big round of applause. I would love
Well, on behalf of the Harlem School Board and the Harlem School District, we want to just obviously say congratulations. I think the accomplishments speak for themselves. And so we are going to do a photo. I didn't really plan this out very well because there's so many of you, but we're going to make it work. So if I could have all of you kind of fill in the middle, I'm just going to have the rest of you stand up and we'll just kind of get one big group photo. We've got this thing here that after about 30 minutes she was getting a little tired, so I'm going to put it down.
Dan, I'm sorry.
I'm going to have you all, if you would kind of come back the taller, maybe towards the back. Yep, come on in here. Yeah, you guys, and then you'll stand here and just face back this way, okay? And then you all kind of fill in. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. You come this way, walk this way with me, then turn around. Yeah, if I can have, actually, I'll have the rest of you. You all stand up as well, Josh. Sharon, if you all want to kind of come in, just stand at your board spot.
Can you note that I did not clearly mark the president?
No,
Not normally your job, though.
Well, maybe we'll refill and then re.
Yes. You got a second chance, Josh.
I'll wait for the galleries to come back up. Moving forward, we have no comments from the community. So approval of the bills.
All right. The total payables this period were $455,138.09. There was one payroll this period, amount of $3,836,930.83, for total expenditures of $4,292,068.92. Split out by fund, the education fund paid $3,762,706.17. The tort fund paid $5,045.24. The operations and maintenance fund paid $133,720.27. The transportation fund paid $173,716.63. The IMRF Social Security fund paid $214,063.73. And the capital projects fund paid $2,816.88. Again, for total expenditures of $4,292,068.92. Are there any unanswered bills?
Can you get a motion to approve the bills?
Motion.
Second.
Mrs. Ramirez? Aye. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
Communications and committee reports. We had the Golden Apple event that was pretty well received and well represented. Harlem had a teacher and a principal there. One got the Golden Apple as a teacher, Ashley Van Sickle, and Melissa Yuska from Windsor. So that was really good to see, not just them show up, but also their teams. We had a lot of their team members there that actually, even in their speeches, were giving credit to, they wouldn't have been there without their team members, and they got to celebrate there with them. So that was fun. I'd love to see what we just saw right there with Olson and McChesney Park. When you hear a bowling teacher or coach say that it's not easy, but they still went above and beyond to be able to let those kids do that, that's awesome. And just to see that all these kids coming up are performing well, but not just as students, but as athletes. But they're gonna be doing well in school as well. So it's good to see bowling at Harlem has a nice little feeder program. Hopefully we can do that with baseball. We're trying to do that with the state line things, but bowling has been pretty good for us, so keep it up. Next regular board meeting will be May 16th, 2022 at 6 p.m. We have the graduation ceremony at May 28th at 10 a.m. at the BMO Harris Center. I guess I'll take Jill's. The next policy committee meeting will be June 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m. That ends my report. Ms. Meeks.
Okay, good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank Mrs. Edwards and the McChesney Park students for doing a wonderful job with the pledge, and also the 5 students for being great bowlers. We really do appreciate when the students can come out and do the pledges for us, and to be able to bowl that young, and even me as an adult, I'm still gutter. no matter how I try to get that done. So I mean, I'm really proud of all the students from elementary level all the way up to middle school, high school. That's just wonderful and awesome to be able to do that. And it takes a lot of hard work, determination, and skill. So I wish them all continued success in the future. Next, I attended a legislative meeting Wednesday at Forest Hill Club, and it was Maurice West speaking. Each month will be a different one, so I'm looking forward to that. Thursday, I volunteered to help with the career fair at Sports
Corps.
Sports Corps in Riverside.
Sports Corps on Riverside. And I want to say thank you to Patty Lawrence, all the administrators, and I'm going to say all the administrators, I don't know each and everyone's name, and I don't want to miss out. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Boyd. I mean, the students were just wonderful, and I also want to thank the counselors. And I really want to say thank you to all the students for coming out there. We had a few little kids that kind of slipped off, but they still were respectful. They did an amazing job, and the fair was just amazing. All the different jobs and stuff out there, and from all over, you know, talking to the students and trying to guide them in the correct direction, because everybody's not college material. When you have something like that to show that we do care and we're looking forward for you in your future, you guys did a wonderful job, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And thank you to Nikki. But like I said, I didn't want to mention people's names because I know I forget somebody, so I put everybody in the group. And then I also want to give a big thank you to Mrs. Watson, Erin Watson, and the culinary staff. They did an amazing job. They were dressed professionally, they served professionally. And I also want to thank them too. I have been diagnosed with severe food allergies, and they took time to make sure my food was well prepared. And they didn't have to do that because it was a last minute thing, and they got it together. I didn't end up going to the emergency room. So greatly appreciate it, and they look so professional. So I just want to tell Mrs. Watson, you're doing a great job, and you have an amazing bunch of students. I also attended the Golden Apple, and I want to say thank you and congratulations to Ashley Dunsicle. And I also want to say thank you and congratulations to Mrs. Yuska for being winning the Outstanding Principal Award. Also, I want to say congratulations and thank you to Mrs. Gupta for getting a $2,500 grant for the math department. Chris Noble and Dan Hallstrom for the $2,440 for the 3D scanners and the dedicated laptops. Kate Thompson for the $1,500 for books and prizes. And I just want to say I am proud to be a part of this district, and even though COVID kind of took us for a loop, we're still hanging on in there, and we're getting better and better, and we're going to keep reaching to the top. And I really appreciate all of you from the community that keep us on our toes to let us know what's going on. And like I had stressed before, feel free to call any of us if you have any problems or concerns. That is what we're here for. And don't ever feel that we're not here for you. We are, especially our students. When it comes to making sure our students get the best education and be able to be in a safe environment, that's what we want to do. So don't automatically assume that we do know everything that's going on, because we don't. So feel free to call any of us or email us, and if you don't want us to mention who it is, we will keep that promise. We will not let people know how we heard things, but we are here to help and serve. The next equity meeting will be May 26th at 4:30 at the high school in the West 145. There's something else I'm forgetting, I can't think of it, but I'll do it next time. But once again, thanks each and every one of you, and it's been a really enjoyable last week. And I'm looking forward to the next couple of months, especially with graduation and everything else coming up. And this year has definitely gone by fast, and I can't believe school year's almost over with. But that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt Thompson.
Sure. Glad your voice is back, Evelyn. Making it very hard to follow you as always. Echoing most of that, it was great to see so many bowlers in here, and Kelly's amazing job recognizing all of them, the parents that supported them. It's great, and it's great to see that our bowling has so much opportunity now and in the future to see there. Man, Evelyn, you've got most of those things so covered so well. I'm going to rest on most of those, but good news, if you want more excitement, that's what's coming up next. The next Business Services Committee meeting here with Josh is going to be May 11th, 2022, right here at 6 p.m. Come there, get excited, get even more excited for graduation that's coming up shortly after that. And that will conclude my report today. Thanks, guys.
I did attend the business meeting, and I will be at the education. I've been having some little medical issues, but I will be there.
Thanks, Ms. Meeks. Thank you. Thank you for, I have to echo what Mr. Thompson said, to thank you for the community coming out. I wish all those parents were still sitting here, because I would like to thank them so much for, it's the parent involvement and the community involvement that was demonstrated at the career fair. That's what keeps us on top of things. That's that community involvement, and looking out for those kids and doing the best that we can to be good role models. That's what's priceless, and that's what makes Harlem a great community. The next education committee meeting will be a solstice themed committee meeting, because it's on June 21st. So everyone is invited. It was terrific. Dr. Erb does just a terrific job there, and all the principals that attend that are on the education committee. We are very blessed to have a very talented group of administrators working for this district in our schools. And at the board office too, Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you, sir.
We're all a team.
Sue Brogan.
Good evening, everyone. I also would like to thank the McChesney students for the wonderful job with the pledge. It's so nice to have them back in here. And hopefully someday soon we'll be back to handshaking. I just don't think we're there yet. Congratulations to all the bowling teams. Wonderful job. And again, I'd like to echo thank you to the parents and the community that have supported those teams and those students. They wouldn't be able to do it without the support of the community and the parents and the grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody else involved. And they did a wonderful job. There were a lot of high scores there that I probably couldn't hit that score all year. not good at bowling, that's for sure. I did attend also the Apple Award, great event. We filled the hallway when Harlem's Mrs. Van Sickle and Mrs. Gupta were getting their awards. I believe they made a comment about the entourage up there. We had a whole room to ourselves except for 4 members from a different school district, so that was really nice. A lot of support there. So I'd like to again congratulate them. They both looked beautiful that night, and great speeches from both of them. And that shall end my report.
Thank you. Sharon O'Neary.
I wanted to thank the McChesney kids for their doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Our bowling, I'm excited about that because we're gonna see many years of bowlers coming up. And I too, was in the lousy bowler league, so can't bowl, so I'm very jealous. Also, I attended the career fair, and we had 54 businesses there. We covered every single, pathways for kids for college and for, business careers. We also, what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, over 1,000 students went through there, and the food was excellent from our culinary students. That's that. And then also, I did attend the Golden Apple banquet also, and very proud of our principal and our teacher, because we had 2 to represent us, so I think that's very great. And they looked beautiful, they had beautiful long gowns, and it just was, they had the red carpet they walked in, it was very neat to see for the first time for me. And even when they all spoke, it made me tear up because hearing their lives and how they're dedicated to their careers, so I really enjoyed that, and I think that'll end my report.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, if I could go back 1 second, I'd also like to say I'm looking forward to our employee appreciation in May coming up here. That's all. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Turn that over to administrative reports, 11A.
Thank you. I have 2 items this evening. The first one goes back to a conversation that we had earlier in the school year. Josh brought forward a proposal to work with DLA to have them work with our teachers and staff to see what type of structure we might need for our pathways and how that would go with our programming. And so tonight is an update that they're going to share with all of us here this evening. I don't know if there's anything that you have to add to that, Josh?
No, I mean, this crew's been working really hard on this presentation, and I think it's going to be great. Go ahead. So we'll turn it over to you guys. You guys can go through that, take any questions.
I'm just going to move over here so everybody can see.
Do we have to turn around?
Should I turn it on? Sorry.
I'll sneak back over there somehow.
Thank you all very much for having us here tonight. We're very excited to share where we're at conceptually with your career technical education spaces. So with me tonight is, where are we here, yes?
That's not good.
I'll do it from here.
Do you need it just forward for you as needed?
Let's see here.
It's not on.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Sorry about that. With me tonight is Steve Wright, our principal partner in charge. We have Tracy Bierstadt, who is our project architect. My name is Matt Lowe, and Heather Jewell is our lead designer. So going back, this has been really a long time coming. It's November 16th we met for the first time. We really dug deep into educational delivery goals with your administration, your passionate staff, and let me tell you, very passionate and really pushing these pathways to wonderful places. We talked a lot about where we are in the present, but more importantly, where we want to be in the future. And so November 16th is really about educational delivery goals, how you want to teach, and how the students are going to be learning in the future. From there, understanding the educational delivery goals, December 9th, we talked a lot about facility goals. So what should these spaces look like? How should they perform to totally reflect, support, and inspire the learning that's going to happen at Harlem. So we talked about guiding principles, blue sky attributes, and conceptual relationships. In January, we looked to your stakeholder team. We discussed case studies that were relevant based on the things we'd heard. You know, looking at virtual tours on a national level. So looking at some of the top institutions nationally. We talked about virtual tours that the stakeholders have been on in the local areas and local schools that were very inspirational to reflect some kind of the spaces that would be ideal for Harlem. And then in February, we presented our first draft for a building program that would meet all these facility goals. So we talked about what the priorities would be from that building program. And we've had many other meetings in here, additional meetings. These were the key initial ones. There wasn't any endorsement area that was not discussed. We discussed everything. All your endorsement areas, all your career pathways were addressed in these conversations. We had virtual and in-person engagement meetings. We had Google surveys, we had Zoom meetings, we had in-person meetings to really get as much input as possible. Many people in this room we've heard from, and the idea was to get as many diverse opinions and perspectives as possible to build consensus and to really reflect everyone's greatest hopes and desires for what the Harlem High School could and should be. We learned what's important to the Harlem District 122, the modes of learning that are really going to take you to the next level. CTE was at the top of the list. A big thing is real-world learning, really preparing children for entering the real world right out of high school, which was, you know, how do we bring that into the environments that we're creating for the kids and allow the kids to have that real-world experience in the high school and in the years leading to it. Social emotional learning is also very big, that development along with all these other modes of learning. Essential 21st century skills, you know, communication right in the heart there, creativity, creative communication, social skills, technology. And one of the biggest things we learned is what you wanted to do was expand student opportunities, provide an engaging CTE program that will prepare students for the future and have the ability to adapt as future needs change. Adaptability is going to be huge in all these spaces. Some of the guiding principles that were most important to the stakeholders: flexibility, flexible learning environments that will support hands-on learning, the ability to have flexible spacing for small group activities and other groupings to expand student opportunities. Another big one was accessibility, integrated curriculum, the ability to overflow into differentiated learning environments, adapt as future needs change, as we discussed earlier, varied learning settings that support multiple modes of learning. We know that learners learn in different ways and different environments need to support that. Comfort, good ventilation, proper acoustics, especially important in some of these CT spaces, like automotive and manufacturing, where there's a lot of loud noises. Safety, of course, very, very critical. Good visibility of all spaces, so student safety is at the top forefront here. And access to technology, that students have access to the top technology available. Virtual reality simulations, demonstration stations with video and displays to show students. So these are some of the case studies we took a look at, and that really reflected these CTE environments. We talked about likes and dislikes of all these. We've created a booklet that takes all the stakeholder information and has put it into one place, and this will be distributed to your administration and to you to see everything that's been said. And these are just the highlights that we're covering right now. We talked about the program that we discussed earlier, of all the key spaces that would really fully support this vision for the future at Harlem and what the top priorities are of each. And one of the big things that came from it is that being located in one facility would really be the best way to support integrated curriculum and promote collaboration outside CTE. Because we learned that whatever pathway you're studying, there's a collaboration and possibilities for collaboration with other departments. So having it under one roof would be ideal. So looking at taking the manufacturing, automotive, and actually bringing it closer, adjacent to the high school. And one of the areas you've identified with your team as an optimal location would be to the southeast of the high school, near that existing practice soccer field, and getting it adjacent to the school will really promote the collaboration that's really required for that real-world learning and for the future. And to share the design concept, we'll now have Heather Jewell, our lead designer, walk you through the plans and renderings.
So I'm just gonna walk through the plan as it stands today. There will be changes in the future as we develop it. So none of this is completely set in stone. This is really just a snapshot of where we're at. So starting out, we are looking at the addition. So this line right here is kind of where the existing building is versus the addition. All of the new CTE spaces are housed in this addition, so that's manufacturing, engineering, and trades is this kind of violet color. The automotive space is greatly expanded to the south here with 5 bays, appropriate storage, and appropriate classroom for that. Greatly expanded welding, metal fabrication space with 24, we're planning for 24 welding booths, changing stations and locker rooms adjacent to that. Flex classroom, welding classroom, and then a space that you don't have now but anticipate using in the future, a fabrication and construction trade space. We know that these spaces are, they can be loud, they can be noisy. We created this kind of commons area buffer space that allows, a little bit of isolation between the kind of maybe dirty or smelly areas for these spaces and the existing school, but still connects it to the school. So it's connected at 2 levels. This is what we call a learning stair or a gathering stair, so students can gather for presentations, multiple classes can gather, and then it's an additional commons area for the school. Up here to the left is a health clinic that could be used for staff. And then right adjacent to that is a future health science learning lab to kind of get started in the medical program and connect to that. Over here is the 2nd floor, so you can see that learning stair comes up and then connects to the science classrooms on the 2nd floor. So we're thinking about how all those adjacencies work with our new space. Moving into the renovated areas, I should mention these right now we're showing, all the work we anticipate happening. They may happen in different phases. We're not at that point yet where we know that, but these are the areas that we heard need to be addressed. So what you see here in orange is a greatly expanded culinary arts space, renovated additional culinary lab, potentially a cafe in the future, renovated early childhood space with an observation room, and then adding an outdoor play area for the early childhood. And then over here in yellow, an expanded athletic training space. And then moving on, we anticipate renovating the communications area and then renovating some of the business area into a business incubator lab. And then moving into the fun part, this is the addition as it's being developed. Again, this could change in the future, but this is where we are at the moment. Moving into, this is kind of that entry where you could access the clinic off to the right, or it's that manufacturing and construction trades off to the left. Kind of an entry space that draws you in, some parking adjacent to that. And then you see back here, this would be the welding area, and then the automotive, we're planning for those tall volume spaces. We're trying to get as much daylight in there as possible without glare, so students can safely work in those spaces. Just another view of that. We're thinking about, all of the logistics of how those work, getting equipment and materials and things into the spaces easily, making them pleasant spaces with daylighting and transparency. And then this is the automotive space at the back, so we kind of tucked that to the back, so the cars they're working on and things like that aren't necessarily in the public view, they're kind of hidden behind the building. And then what you see here is this link, this 2-story link that I mentioned earlier that's connecting to the existing building over here to the left. So that's what we have so far. We're excited working on this project. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Anybody have any questions or would like to see anything in more detail?
On the reworked, culinary part where they bumped out, yeah, there, the reworked part, that orange part there.
This area?
Yeah, are those existing walks there? That's the existing walks?
Yes.
Was there
Yes.
gonna be a plan to change that, or was that gonna stay the same?
The sidewalks?
Yes.
I think that is something, if we would move forward with the cafe part, we might look at that, maybe create an outdoor component to the cafe.
Right, right. Maybe a drive-up window or something like
I
that?
see where you do that.
So I'm gonna pass out, DLA has a couple costing options based on which square footage makes it in there, and then there's a bonding scenario that I had our bond people put together too, so you guys kinda have an idea of what that.
Does it also contain some of this where it's a little easier to read?
Say that again?
Does this packet also include this information?
No, I think we'll email you
Okay.
that if you'd like. Is there two? Sorry.
How far out are we talking before any of this were to?
Sure. So, you want me to jump in? You wanna? It would be done for the summer of '24, so.
I'm
do you
sorry,
wanna
I didn't hear the question.
She talked about timeline.
Oh,
You wanna just maybe
timeline.
just briefly touch base on that?
Sure, we have discussed, that the addition would be ready for the 24-25 school year. So we anticipate that it would be ready for, the summer of '24. But we do anticipate that depending on the entire scope of the remodeling that is done inside, that we would utilize both the summer of '23 and the summer of '24 to do the renovations. And while that is going on, the addition, because it's nicely separate from the school, can actually be constructed probably in about an 18-month time period while school is going on. And so that is right now what we're planning for.
So regarding the clinic too, because we talked a little bit about that, it currently is in there, but we would provide more information about how that's beneficial and survey staff, make sure that's something that staff want in there too, before we get to that final like request phase of it.
Yeah, I'll let you guys look over it. I've looked at this, walked it, stared at it, so I am up to speed. If anybody has any questions, you can ask them or ask me, whatever you guys need.
I'll bounce it back to you. What questions, since you know it so precisely, have you come up with that would be beneficial for all of us to hear? So the questions you walked through that got answered.
Well, we do have bathrooms accessible, which is now, wasn't on the original. It's up in the front, so that's already been resolved. Having the ability for the top portion to actually be, we're gonna do the construction there. It's a big enough space, but it also can be retrofitted as needed for other manufacturing or other stuff. The middle section is gonna be safer and way better than what we're obviously currently doing. But it looks more like the one that where was the one that we went to in Chicago?
Elk Grove High School?
Elk Grove.
High School, yes.
It's-
And we
it's
toured
like
that
Elk-
as well
yes.
afterwards, so we could have the same frame of reference.
It's like Elk Groves, which you can either get online and look at, or we'll have a thing, but actually this one is, like, I think three times bigger than Elk Groves.
Yes.
So it's gonna give us more capability of even using that space in many different ways. And it's just not gonna be confined to what we currently think we wanna do with it. The bays that we're gonna have on the back that can be utilized, I mean, there's,
We've also had some conversations with DLA about the possibility of using a construction manager to help oversee some of that. That's what Hananiga did, because DLA did Hananiga's addition too up there. So Dr. Yarbrough and I were gonna meet with one in town and just get that information and bring that back if that's a recommendation for the board to consider.
so with it is just looking at that footprint and saying, is this what we wanna do with our pathways going forward? And from what we've talked and the way we got students lining up, this is where we'd be going.
Was storage area addressed in this? Is there adequate storage?
Yes, in all of our workshops, we had several workshops with the faculty and staff, and storage is always one of the top priorities. So we definitely took that into account, and you can kind of see a couple of the areas that we have identified for storage have access with overhead doors to the outside for delivery, as well as access to automotive. And then there's more storage over here as well for the welding and fabrication lab. And then this fabrication and construction trades area doesn't have anything identified right now for storage, but we'll definitely be adding that in as we have those continued conversations.
Can you just give me a ballpark of the square footage for those 3 areas that you just pointed out?
This one right here is 480 square feet, so it's about the size of a half of a large classroom. This one is 523, and there is also some other storage, smaller storage areas off of staff collaboration offices as well. And you'll be able to see all of the spaces with the square footages. When we send you the drawings, we'll send you everything digitally as well.
Here's an email.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna email you this right now so you guys have a copy. of it.
Excellent.
Yep.
So there's,
Oh, I was gonna mention that.
We do have the potential, these are lower volume areas over these classrooms and changing areas, so we do have the potential for additional mezzanine storage that would be accessible through like a ship's ladder or a floor lift.
One thing too, to keep in mind, just going through this whole process, we wanted to not only make sure that we had like a nice facility, but also that it grew with our curriculum needs. And so there are individuals here, if you have questions about the curriculum, piece, we got Dr. Boyce in the back, Mr. Hubert, Dr. Erb has been a part of this process as well as many of us as well, just to make sure that we just don't have a fancy building, right? That it actually
It needs to be functional.
yeah, it's functional with our needs, and so that's part of the process as well. So.
Sure.
And was it looked at, because that's a lot of maintenance, did we look at it in regards to fitting it into the maintenance, ingress and egress for maintenance and the scheduling of the maintenance? That's gotta be, a personnel issue, et cetera. Did we look at that?
We'll factor that in and with the custodial group, but I didn't like put an FTE to that or anything, but yeah, we'll make sure that's included. Cause I just wanna take a second and thank DLA too for helping guide this process, cause without them helping keep us focused and on the right track between curriculum and the space too, cause it's important that it attaches to the building, for multiple reasons. And so they did a great job identifying that space, making that connection to the current building and putting everything because this is like revision 5 at least, right? So, and like you said, it's gonna keep changing probably, but I think this hopefully meets the needs of what the staff and the kids need and what you guys have been looking for, hopefully.
Exactly, and to add on to that too, our teachers who are part of the process as well as our administrators put a lot of time and effort into getting us to where we need, and so thank all of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
so there's 2 options. What are the key differences between these 2 options that have been handed out to us here?
The 2 options represent kind of the amount of scope of renovation. So the first option includes what were the workshops identified as the highest priorities, or what we might consider phase 1. And depending on funding levels, the additional renovation can be added to expand that scope to option 2.
Sure. So cafe being probably the leading cost driver of option 2?
Option 2 has a few more spaces. It adds some renovation to, for example, the telecommunications pathway.
Okay.
There's an area where we're showing, could you flip to
Yeah,
that
it's the
screen?
business incubator lab
Yes.
and the arts.
So the arts, communications, and humanities area would have some remodeling in that option 2 that would include sound booths and some editing spaces. And for example, in the business pathway, there would be a business incubator lab, which again would be more of a multifunctional space where a lot of the different pathways could come together and work on a collaboration, collaboratively, I should say, as well as that would be an incubator space that's located next to a lot of the other business classrooms.
Sure, thank you.
Kurt, too, as the curriculum dictates where this goes, what happens with inflation, are we able to fundraise $500,000 of this equipment? Like, there also could be some alternates in there too, like maybe one of these programs is bid in there, but then we see kind of how everything comes in and if it fits in. So just having that flexibility of continuing the design, looking at the curriculum, seeing what happens, because you know, if inflation comes back down a little bit, or if it goes, you know what I mean, there's so many things between now and 6 months from now
Yeah,
that could change.
compression costs, everything, yeah.
So that's why it's kind of a little, like there's a core piece and then there's a little bit of the options in there too, so.
So even if you pick one, there still can be multiple phases upon that. Like,
Yeah,
basically, you get the footprint in, and then certain things can be added to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully we can fit in as much as possible.
And then, I like the bringing it back to the high school. When we were looking at other options, besides the proximity, where was it with the other options to cost? Was there a cost savings to attaching it besides the other benefits? Or was it, you know?
So we did show them that land that we had out on Swanson, but it's so far out that part of the main curricular piece of this was having the students on site, but not only that, but starting somewhere from scratch like that. And there is a legal piece of a referendum if you do any classroom space that's not attached to a current building too. So
Okay.
you would have a referendum piece of it. So not only being everyone on site from collaboration, student schedules, you don't have the referendum piece on it. There was just a lot of boxes that it checked. If anyone else, feel free to jump in.
And any concerns with, I mean, we're going into that, sounds like a spare practice area. Is there concerns for what that's being used by repurposing that space?
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca will have to figure out on a couple pinch points on an additional field or whether they go to Olson. I mean, that will be a slight inconvenience, but not
Okay,
dramatic.
so first, at least a potential, I mean, at least overall, at least a small concern. It's not, hey,
Yeah.
we do this, you know, this team is particularly up in arms or frustrated with that move.
Is that fair, Jay?
I think so. I used to coach soccer, so I'm
Okay. Sorry. And so we know that 5 million of this is ESSER 3, and the rest will be the bond funding. So we'll see how everything else comes in.
And this doesn't have any sorts of, like, where we go out to the community for any potential fundraising at all that way?
Well, so that is just potential cost pieces, but yes, there could definitely be some of that. I know Patty's working hard on making some of those connections from the automotive side, and there's other manufacturers in town. And that's where I was saying, like with the equipment between Cianci and area businesses,
Mhm.
you know, if we can check off a handful of that equipment, then maybe that'll free up space for other pieces of this. So, yeah, that would be the goal.
Any other questions?
But it's just not tying our hands to just the current programs. That's the important factor.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, we say the only thing that's gonna be really hard-coded, it looks based off of this, would be some sort of automotive because of the bays,
And
and then
welding.
pretend the welding, right? Those are the only one, and again, I don't see either of those going away anytime soon, but it's nice to have some of that flexibility because we don't know what's coming through.
Sure.
And
You know, that this is a very flexible plan that is gonna be able to be fluid throughout the next 20 years, which is great.
I mean, you gotta look, there's at least 3 of us that are sitting here now that were part of the generation of the business academy, the tech academy, and kind of where that changed and how that could evolve and how it kind of hits some technical limitations. So, I mean, we should be able to use that to learn what worked out well and what didn't, into thoughts of this.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So the plan at this point would be to come back to the board early June with an MOU to ask to move forward so they can start the design phase of that project. So, you know, as they keep refining that, the
Now,
plans.
how much will these numbers change? I mean, I honestly, it's not gonna fluctuate that much.
I'll let you guys address that.
Oh, boy.
That's what I'm saying. I know about that, what I'm saying.
Every project manager just cringed.
I every day, right now, oil prices are changing, so everything changes all the way through. I get all that. So what I'm saying is that it's gonna be something like this.
Yeah, yeah, so I think,
Yeah.
I think the 13 is a solid number. If we could get some of the fundraising, you know, there is some flexibility in there too, and when I talk to
Start
PM.
putting names on buildings. Anderson's on load.
Right, yeah, but when I talk to our bond, the people that help us with those timelines too, we can put an initial amount in the bond a little bit higher, open that after we open the bid, or so we can do the bond after the bid, so that we know what the bid came in at, so that we're not putting the cart before the
Do we
horse.
have kind of like a worst case, best case scenario on, I mean, we're guessing out what inflation is, which is a fool's errand, but like, can we take like a worst case scenario? Because, you know, what's worse is making sure that we have, if we go forward, having enough room that if something goes over or costs change, making sure that we don't get hung up, or seeing those and going, guys, we have to cut these. I'd rather know, saying this is what's going to be cut, or this is what we can do, versus getting in there going, guys, we either need to find money we can't have, or now what's chopped,
right,
and you see an empty building.
Yes. And what we do is throughout the whole design process, we'll have different phases of the design, starting off with schematic design, going into more and more detail as we keep going through design development and construction documentation. And during each of those phases, we have touchbacks of cost estimates, where we'll come back and we'll say, oh, okay, you know, as we've defined this and detailed it more, we're realizing that, hey, you know, of all of these priorities, you know, we're starting to push the limits of the budget, basically. And so let's start to make sure we have our priorities in check. But we're also carrying a contingency. So we're basing it on what we're seeing happening in the current economy, but we're also carrying a contingency. And so we're gonna have those checkpoints, you know, at milestones throughout the design process before we go out to bid, so that we can make those choices. If we see inflation, you know, continuing on, you know, 7% or something like that, we're like, okay, well now we're here and we wanna go out to bid, let's talk about maybe having this amount of square footage or this feature as an alternate to give us that cushion. So there's several different ways that we can account for that.
And that's where I was saying having maybe a program be an alternate too, so as we see, so we have that flexibility, we have a little bit of bond flexibility, and then one thing that DLA does good is put that extra amount in there, and just as a contingency in case that it nuts back down if we don't use it, but it's there in case. So between those multiple things, and as we get further down the road, we'll be able to, you know, narrow that down more and more, so.
We have set stakeholders if it gets to that point of going, who's the determination of what may get shrunken or expanded based on those? Is that a group that we have currently? Or is that going to be you directly, or how does that look?
That's where
Or it come to us?
Well,
I mean, I just want to know kind of, I mean, eventually it can flow that way if there's concerns, but just making sure that those things are in place, because right now it's all unicorns and rainbows, but as money comes down and things come through, just making sure we have plans in place to not happy path it, you know.
Obviously, the additional square footage would come first, because that's new square footage, and without getting too far out there, culinary seems to be a space that definitely needs to be renovated, and then we'll just have a list that we'll go down from there, so, yeah.
There's definitely been conversations as far as prioritizing things like that, you know, with what we need, and we can have those conversations as we keep going.
Let's go through business services first.
The MOU?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so because we started talking about that timeline piece, and so whether that just goes to the normal June meeting, whether we have a June meeting before the middle of the month to get them going, just depends on, as we further that conversation, like, when's the MOU ready, when do you guys need to go ahead to get going, so that we don't miss any timelines, because, you know, if they start this now, and I'm talking generalities, not in specific, but like if the plans are done in December, now there might be some things that have to go out to bid earlier that are a year behind, because we see a handful of those things, right? So let's say you went out, you opened a bigger bid in January and did a bond in February, then that would hit your spring season. That would give them 14, 15, 16 months to finish before school starts. So that's rough, but that's what it looks like right now for timeline.
When's your June business services?
Did I say that one? No, I said May. I'd have to look to see exactly what June is, unless someone has it offhand. I can pull up
It's
the calendar. Oh, look at that.
So we would post
Josh
that on
added
June
again.
6th. That's somewhat early.
Is that doable?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll have that recommendation, well, either in May or that one in June if that construction manager is the way to go with that too. So we'll bring that also.
Yeah, just, yeah, where information comes, just the more you can supply to us, the better, just to keep us informed.
Great.
It'll make our end decisions far easier.
Yeah. You guys have anything else?
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah,
all your hard
thank you,
work and
guys.
all
This
the
is great.
details.
Thank you.
Bill, Jeremy,
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Right, have a safe drive back.
Where's everyone coming from again?
Where y'all located?
We're all over.
Yeah.
All over?
Have a safe drive back, guys.
I asked Abby, sorry guys. I have another item I wanted to make sure everybody was awake for.
Mr. Hubert, thank you too for your help on last week.
I did.
You did an amazing job. It was nice seeing you there.
Good for you.
But you always forget that I start looking around. 'Cause I hate when I start calling out names and I.
So my second item this evening, at our last education committee meeting, Mr. Hubert shared some updates with the intergovernmental agreement with Rock Valley for the Running Start program. And so after he presented that, we took consensus to bring it to the board tonight for approval. So, Mr. Hubert?
Not nearly as exciting or as engaging as a new building. There's just a couple changes that you need to be aware of with the new with the new intergovernmental agreement with RVC for Running Start specifically. This is only a single-year contract instead of a multi-year contract. They did that because they want the opportunity to meet with schools so they can go over the acceptance criteria that a lot of schools are setting with their students. I know they've had some struggles through the pandemic, especially with students and being successful with some of the remote learning provided. So they want an opportunity to sit down with all area schools to look over some of that criteria. The second big change they have relates to House Bill 3950 as it relates to providing for special education services, IEPs and 504s. So one of the things they want to make sure is for any student who is attending the Running Start program that has an IEP or a 504, that it is worked into their transition plan. It is something the student is prepared for, and there's an action plan in place to help that student to be successful. And then the other two parts have to do a lot with communication. I don't know if you're aware or not, but in a lot of cases, even at the age of 16, students, they don't have to provide any information to parents at the college level. Okay, and so it's been a lot more difficult to have some of that communication to keep track of our students. One of the things they'd like to do is to make sure at the midterm, if they have any students who have a D and F, a withdrawal, or somehow in some other way aren't meeting academic standards, that student then within a week, they're gonna let the schools know, and the school counselor, a representative from Rock Valley, and the student have to work together to come up with a success plan. The student has to come up with a success plan to share with both entities. And then if that's not successful and they're still struggling at the semester, they'll be put on academic probation, and they'll work to sit down with the parent and involve the parents as well to develop and share that plan. So those are the big changes with the new Running Start intergovernmental agreement. In case you're curious, they did go up by $5 more credit, just so everyone's aware. Any other questions?
How many students do we have right now that go to Rock Valley with the 504? Do we know?
I did not ask, that's a great question. I didn't ask how many actually have a 504. We typically send 12 students every year.
Okay.
Is there anything that can increase that number, or what is that based on? Like 12 seems like there's room to grow.
Sure, so It is something, that the 12 was something that was established as far as student preparedness, and there's really I think there are 3 steps right now Harlem puts in place for students as far as writing essays and interviewing for it and looking through the criteria. So by the time they get that down, there's typically around 12 students who really stand out that definitely deserve to be a part of the program, and that's the number that was established just looking at the criteria. There's typically around 12 that really stand out in that sense.
Is there a maximum?
Yeah, thank you.
Is there a maximum that our Rock Valley gives us?
There is a maximum in that they did, that is in there now at 17.
Oh, okay.
So that did change.
It at least helps when you hear 12. 12 is more, it's balanced when you hear a max of 17.
Correct.
Versus we only have 12 and we could have, half, or you just don't know, right? So that helps.
Certainly.
Historically, how would that have affected us in the past? How many, I should have asked this the other day, but how many would have had that struggle and have to have had some intervention in the past?
So one of the, I'm sorry, are you okay with me going at this
Well,
right?
so there's been one student who has had to come back because they weren't successful. That was during the time of the pandemic. There was another student who chose not to continue at semester, not necessarily because of academic purposes, but because they, you're talking about a high school experience versus a college experience. So,
And one of the things that Rock Valley has shared before, because we do have that like 3-tier and we include the writing aspect, our students who go there tend to be successful. There have been some other districts that have sent larger numbers, but haven't necessarily had all those skills that are necessary to be a college student.
Sure.
And so they have had a few more that have needed to come back, or some of these struggles. So we've tried to be proactive so that the ones who are going there are best prepared for that college experience.
Yeah, set them up for success, sure.
Correct.
Yeah, but it also,
Yeah.
thinking out loud, it could be exclusionary because you're setting up these things that are gonna weed out people that might be successful if given the opportunity, but aren't successful at the application process. And if we have steps in place that are gonna warn us if we are having problems and we can intervene, I don't know.
Which will be the first time we'll have those steps. Before that, we didn't have the ability to even know that they were struggling.
Is the point that some of those steps could be introduced into that vetting process?
That's certainly something to explore as far as, how that would help out our students, to investigate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Motion.
That's a good sign when you present.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's thank you. Threw me off. Josh, you're up.
Before I start my items, I just want to show this bonding scenario, the blue line. This includes $3 million for the middle school and the H9 roof replacement, which we've kind of talked a little about that. But the timeline is about the same, so the bonding people put it together, but.
I may have just some general questions when I actually have a chance to read through it and think that.
Yeah. So it nets out to 7.5 here, 5 from ESSER 3, so that's 12.5 that we have right there. So I just wanted to point that out because I didn't get a chance to read it. So for my normal agenda items, I have 2 quick items tonight. First, a recommendation to approve a resolution declaring surplus property at Marquette Elementary. And we did end up getting a facility request come in for State Line Amateur Soccer Sunday at the high school, which is at your place. So, are there any questions on either of those items?
Were they gonna practice
Yeah.
Huh?
That was the joke I was going for. Well played.
it? They practice it on the side.
They're getting this in quickly.
Okay.
If there are no questions, then those are my items.
Thank you. Dr. Shelley Wagner.
Good evening. Tonight I have the recommendation to approve the personnel agenda and addendum. This evening we do have both. So I'll start off with employments. We have 17 employments. I'd like to draw your attention really quickly to Ms. Stephanie Wick. She's been doing a great job subbing for us in food and nutrition services. And her start date will be August 15th, 2022. So if you'll look right on that page where Stephanie Wick is listed, that would be her start date. Her start date was missed for that one. We have 15 transfers. This is the transfer season, where teachers decide to go to different levels or custodians go to a new building, something like that. So we have 15 transfers tonight. One request from the Federation Bank for 20 days. We have 3 leaves of absence. And we have 9 resignations, and I have a couple things to note in the resignations. One is a revision. So we had already approved the resignation for Rhonda Hoffbar, but she wanted a date change. TRS told her that it would be more beneficial to her if she moved her date from, I believe, June 7th to June 1st. So she wanted to make that adjustment, and we said, okay, we'll bring it to the board and ask if that's all right. The second is Hope Suggs. Her resignation date is March 30th, 2022. That is a mistake in the agenda. It says 2021 in there, different date in 2021, but it is March 30th, 2022. And that'll be it for me tonight.
Thank you. Dr. Troy Yarbrough.
All right, thank you. My item here is the subcommittee recommendation that was presented to our education committee meeting last week. You all have gotten the information probably dating back to January when we first had our book challenge. And so this is in reference to 6:231 when we had a parent challenge 8 of our books that are currently in the library. So this is one parent that's challenging 8 books. I'll read the books out loud, just quickly, but I won't go over the presentation. But the first book that's being challenged is Lawn Boy, a novel. The second book that's being challenged is Monday's Not Coming, a novel. The third book that's being challenged is Gender Queer, a memoir. The next book that's being challenged is Beyond Magenta, Transgender Teens Speak Out. The next book that's being challenged is The Bluest Eye. The next book that is being challenged is Out of Darkness. The next book is I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican American Daughter. And then the final book that's being challenged is The Opposite of Innocence. Now, through the process, just to kind of take you back real quick, the good news is, and I've checked with other superintendents around the area, is that we actually have a policy on how to go through things like this, which is good. So we're able to hear the concerns of our community, particularly our parents who have students within the community. So that's good. And so within that process, you had the original challenge. You guys saw that information, how it's laid out in our policy. The first step is to work with our librarian. Librarian talks with the parents to try to work out an agreement. Our librarian in this particular case at the high school read all 8 books, tried to work with the parents, and came to a conclusion that the books are appropriate, for our high school library. One of the resolutions was to offer to the parent to restricting access for just the parent's child. That wasn't accepted. Next step in the policy was for me to meet with the parents as well, which I did, and had the same conversation as well, and that also was not accepted. And so the final piece to the policy was to form a committee. Within that committee, we had 8 staff members, 6 high school staff members, and 2 librarians. One at the middle school, and I think librarian was it Ralston? I think it was at Ralston, because the next step in the committee, next step in the process, we could not have the current, our librarian who had, gave that original, verdict. And so where we are now is I presented this information to the education committee, and now we're here at the board meeting where I'm going to read the recommendation from the actual committee, and then as a board, then we decide on that So the actual recommendation from the committee is in summary, and I'm just gonna read it verbatim. This committee does not recommend removing any of these challenge books from our high school library. While these books do discuss and depict mature topics, we believe each of them has value for our students. Many of them are authored by diverse voices and provide students with unique perspectives that would otherwise be missing from our catalog. Furthermore, these texts offer students the opportunity to see themselves represented in the authors and/or characters, an important function of literature. A number of these books also provide resources for struggling students. We do not believe that any of the concerning material in these texts is presented without merit or purpose, nor do any of these texts glamorize or glorify harmful behavior. Removing these books from our library would be a disservice to our students, particularly those who are most in need of reaffirming or represented literature. So that is the recommendation from the committee. I will open it up for questions from anyone about the process or how we arrived here. That's where we are.
So each committee member read at least 2 books?
At least 2 books, yes.
And I'm sorry, how many members of the committee did you say? 8?
8, yes. So they split it up into 2. We also had a chair of the committee that was chaired with making sure to bring together the thoughts of the collective group. I was not a part of that process. That's part of the policy as well. And so then the chairman gathered all the information from the 8 members who read the books and then came up with this conclusion.
And this is specific to the library where they're contained at this point, the high
Yes.
school, correct?
Correct.
Do we have to vote on all of these at one time, or can we pull any of them from the recommendation?
No. I think that all we're doing is just,
Yeah.
the education committee has already looked at the, so I think all we're doing is just approving what the education committee's decision.
So basically at this point then, so librarian, independent committee, and then the education committee, and now us.
Well, the
Correct, is the process?
superintendent also.
Oh, superintendent, yeah, sorry, not to.
Yeah, and my whole piece was just to try to figure out if I could work something out with the parent who was challenging it.
Mhm.
And that the conversation that I had was restricting the access to the books to their student.
And basically, no matter the turnout of that, those are still valid. If they
Those are
decide
still
to go
valid.
that way, okay.
What's the discussion on each individual books? I mean, I have an issue, but I'm just,
Did they all read? Did everybody all read the books?
Just 2, they said.
Yeah.
So had to read at least 2, it said.
But that's still not everybody.
Right.
I'm willing to discuss the books with anyone, but I don't think here's, I've read all of them. Yeah, if you wanna talk about it, I don't think here's the right place.
Yeah.
So where is the right place?
Well, it went through due
Get order,
process and.
With no taxpayer, no parent, and no grandparent.
one moment, please. We're gonna be having our discussion. So what, in our process, we have, so 2 people are gonna decide if that book goes through. And then that's any book right now. Is that what we're saying?
Two people would read and then discuss and then push their percentage, if I'm understanding that
Correct,
correctly.
that's what I'm asking. So it would be
Right.
basically the consensus of 2.
The consensus of the whole committee though, which was 8.
And presumably a minimum requirement? Like, there's nothing prohibiting you from reading additional books?
And then 2, I'll keep my beliefs out of it, but there's a reason why we, in my opinion, have a policy that we go through and in this particular case too, working it out with that particular parent, right? Like that's the books are being challenged right now by by one parent, not a whole lot of, just one parent right now.
She spoke on behalf of many
Wait,
of
wait,
us.
wait.
That's not
I'm
what,
sorry.
that's what's going on right now.
Who is able to check out all these books? Any student?
Any high
student,
school
Any high
student.
school student right now.
Sue, what are your thoughts?
I mean, what Larry's pretty much telling us is the committee already voted, so we're not anything with this.
Well, due process has been followed. There's a policy and there's a process, and due process was followed in this instance.
And our voting item does say consideration and approval of subcommittee recommendations, so that's basically what Larry's.
But okay, so if we vote on this and we don't approve it, it goes back to the committee to,
Does it say in the policy? I'd have to go and reread the policy.
Right.
I would have to read the policy
Yeah.
to know if there's an appeal of the recommendation, but
cause I mean, if it's, why even have the approval process then?
Right, it needs not be on the board agenda if it's not a board thing.
Hmm?
Because no, I don't agree with the consensus of the committee.
So do we have that policy?
Dr. Yarborough,
I mean,
can
I'm
I
one
share?
vote,
Yeah,
so it's,
I mean,
Is
I
it-
would,
you
Is that
have it right in
appropriate?
front of you?
No.
Okay. I'll pull it.
yeah, because right now, because Mr. Smith obviously was at the education committee meeting and he heard the presentation. If you're okay, I would have Mr. Smith talk, where he is with everything.
Well, because when it was first, there was one book challenged, and so I was extremely interested in it, and I says, well, yeah, and first thing I did was went out and got the book to read it. But then there were 7 more books that were challenged, and that was a challenge to me, because then I went and got those other 7 books so that I could read those as well, so that I could be informed. And I also looked at the response from Ms. Krippner, the original response to the challenge. And I really appreciate whoever challenged, and I think is it somebody here challenged them?
Tonight, she wasn't able to come tonight.
Well, I appreciate the person who challenged them, because they really they showed support for the LGBTQ community as well as people of colors. I'm going to take this off, because they objected to language that was inappropriate. They were using derogatory and discriminating language based on someone's color or based on their gender identity, and I agree wholeheartedly that is wrong. And the same is true. The challenge also objected to offensive language that was used in these books, and I couldn't agree with that challenge either, because I don't like using offensive language. I will not use offensive language. I think there's too many terrific words to use that I don't need to use naughty words. But I also recognize, because I do read, that in literature, the author has to use those kind of words in order to create that whole story. And that's the whole thing with literature, is if you're not using words that are real to the reader, that would seem out of place in the story, and you wouldn't be able to send either the message or the story or whatever it was that you're trying to demonstrate to the reader. If you're not using real language, then you're not gonna be successful in that story, in my opinion. And also, I noted in the challenges that there was pornographic content that was being questioned. And I probably spent way too much time looking at definitions of pornography and how the courts have ruled on pornography and obscene things, and it was interesting, but it came back to that same kind of thing, that in literature, when you put something in that's part of the whole, you can't just remove that and look at it in isolation, that you have to look at it as part of the whole. And when I read these books, in every instance, it didn't meet that criteria of being pornographic because it was part of the whole. It was part of the whole story. There was one book in particular that I felt, can I say the book? It's okay? Yeah. And I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. I do feel that the author was being, I believe the word's prurient in their language that they used. And I would like to reach out to that author and say, hey, you didn't have to do that. You had a good book going, and you could have made that same point without going to, but anyway, I'm digressing. But even with that one, the language that was used was appropriate as part of the story, and especially considering what this character was going through regarding mental health issues. So it really was appropriate. Purview. I can't pronounce.
Oh, purview? Is that what you're saying, purview?
No.
Oh.
Prurient. It means
Prurient?
that it's excessively sexual.
Oh, fair.
And, for the reason of being overtly sexual.
I did not know that word, thank you.
But it was, what was really good to me to see, and again, I'm getting back to what I said originally, that it was good to see that this concern was addressed, that there was a policy in place, and this, again, speaks highly, I feel, of the Harlem School District, that there was a policy in place when there was a concern by the public. There was a policy in place, and there was due process to be followed. And then that due process was followed, and then it was presented in a decent and orderly fashion to the education committee. And they were represented, the people from the committee were represented at the education committee, and it was open to questions at that time, before it was even approved. And there was, I don't think there was any discussion, really. It was.
So unfortunately, I had a paying job that I had to be there.
I'm sorry.
Be to that evening and couldn't be at that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but they did a really good job.
What's the name of that?
And some of these books, they really range. Some of them I've already recommended to friends and family, that they were just really well-written books. Some of them, like the one I've already mentioned, I would have suggested it would have been a better book if it would have been edited, and I don't think the part that I'm talking about needed to be removed, but a good editor is extremely valuable, in my opinion.
Yes, this is up for vote to approve the subcommittee's recommendation, and that's the recommendation that Terrell read verbatim. And that does follow our policy. It does say in there, the committee shall render its decision, and then it goes on to say the superintendent shall bring the committee's recommendation to the Harlem Board of Education's committee, which that's what Larry's talking about. And for consideration at their regularly scheduled meeting, the education committee shall review the recommendation and raise any concerns, and then forward the recommendation to the Harlem Board of Education for consideration. So that's what's going on tonight, is they've made the recommendation, it's gone through
And there
Larry's
were no-
committee, education committee, and that's what you're voting on is their recommendation, verbatim, read verbatim by Terrell.
And in this particular case, because it wasn't a single book that was singled out, it was 8 books. That's why the recommendation is the whole. If it was just one book, right,
Yeah.
then that would be what we would be doing right now. But the challenger challenged 8 books.
I understand Larry's point of you have to leave some information in to get your point across and to go through the thing. I guess my point is I don't think you have to add the pictures in to tell the story. And I have a problem with that book, particularly.
Yeah, and I understand that. Trust me, when I saw those pictures.
Words are a little different than the pictures, and I have a problem with those pictures in that book.
It was too graphic.
And again, I think it was part of the story. It was part of the story. It was part of the whole. Were the pictures too graphic?
Mr. Sterling, can I ask a question?
No, this time,
But again, like Dr. Yarborough said, that's one book. Some of those books were amazingly good. Some of them were just wonderful books.
I did note for the record that I believe I heard you say that you offered the person that brought the complaint the ability to have her student or restricted, so that will be in the minutes as well.
That goes for any student, for any book, for any reason,
Right.
right? So as this becomes more community, if these are books that are out there, that's a community effort as well. And you're willing to facilitate that, be it 1 or 50?
It's part of the policy.
any more discussion? Evelyn? Sharon? No? Okay, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. 12A, approval of the personnel agenda and addendum.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
Mrs. Leary?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks?
You have to answer, Evelyn.
I know, I'm still trying to digest. I wish we still got a chance to read some of this stuff.
That's
But,
the
okay, I'm
approval
sorry.
of personnel.
This is, yeah,
Oh,
this is
okay.
12A.
That's
12A.
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 Aye, sorry, I'm sorry, I guess my head started.
12C, approval of facility request.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
Mrs. Leary?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye. 13A, approve resolution declaring surplus property.
Motion.
Second.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
Mrs. Renieri?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
13B, consideration and possible approval of intergovernmental agreement with Rock Valley College for Running Start program.
Motion.
Second.
Mrs. Renieri?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
Consideration and approval of subcommittee recommendation.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Sterling?
No.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Brogan?
No.
Mrs. Renieri?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? No.
So that'll go back to the subcommittee.
Jesse.
I will have to check
Yeah, we'll
because
So it has to go
we're
back.
talking about due process and we found a policy, so now I need to check with our board attorney to see if we need to do the due process hearing officer.
I guess, if you don't, you really gotta go back to the whole beginning.
Right.
Don't you? You have to follow due process. And the due process, you just follow due process.
Yeah, so we'll check with the
That's
board
why we
attorney.
have due process.
Okay, no, I get it, and that's what, well, maybe we'll all be at the next one, so we can voice it at the earlier stages and have a consideration. All right, moving forward to.
The laundry list.
Yeah, approve annual organizational items.
Unless you see an item in the organizational items, the reason why they're called organizational is because every year they happen at this time. There is no election of officers tonight because we don't have, you're in your middle of your terms and officers. So you can approve them all in bulk, like.
I motion to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, or if you see something you don't like, you can pull it out and vote on it.
I'll give everybody a moment. Any objections to going 14A through 14S?
Was there anything different on 14R, I suppose? Or is there any call-outs on that one?
No, that policy, we actually are, it's mandatory that we submit that to the IASB.
Okay,
and
just
we
submitting
submit
it?
Right, we're
Okay.
in the court, we're fine on that. And anytime we update it, we resubmit it.
Okay.
The resolution authorizing designated depositories, Josh has an attachment to that showing the depositories, that's just routine. Everything is pretty routine, and that's why you can approve them in bulk. The only thing missing from this list is the annual meetings and committees, and that will be on May 17th. Because we already have our June meeting set from last year, so we'll bring those forward May 17th for you to approve.
I've got no problem with bulking them.
Sue?
I'm good.
So it's a motion to approve items.
Yeah, motion to approve 14A items, 14A through 14S.
Motion.
Second.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
Mrs. Ranieri?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
And Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
There are no, does anybody have any announcements or discussions that they would like to add at this time? No? All right. I need a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss employment of personnel. 5 ILCS 120-2C1. Negotiations. 5 ILCS 120-2C2. Pending litigation. 5 ILCS 120-2C11.
Motion.
Let me get to the back. Make
Nope.
sure.
Is there more?
Second.
Oh. Mrs. Ranieri?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Meeks? Aye. Mr. Sterling?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Brogan?
Aye.
5